Hi, it's lovely to see you all. So today I'm going to be talking to you about advanced integrated strategies and tactics. And really what I'm going to cover is AI and machine learning, how do you talk clients into things, and getting ready for the future. And between that, I'm going to introduce a whole load of things that I use to make my campaigns more successful. Now, my job has largely been to build links and get coverage from places like this for clients like this. And I recently started looking into AI and machine learning because I went out on my own and I needed to try and scale what I did. There's only so much you can do as a lone ranger. And I looked at PR agencies and I looked at SEO agencies, and the way in which they scale just didn't work for the way that I worked. You know, PR SEO is a different beast. So I was like, well, who do I look to? Who can I copy? And I thought, oh, publishers, of course. They have all the same problems I have. Reduced time, reduced resource, and I knew that they were using AI to help them fix this. And they're using it to help them create content, direct the workflow, pretty much everything I needed help with. So I was like, this is great. I'm going to either mimic or hack what they do. So if I'm hacking it, I'm trying to be more efficient, and if I'm mimicking it, I'm just straight out copying their good ideas. So I asked them, do you think editorial has become more tied to revenue in the last 10 years? And I got one hell of an interesting answer. One journalist said to me, hey, Lexi, you know what? You know how we recently merged a whole lot of our international teams? Well, we've actually just created a new team. And this team isn't governed by editorial, and it's not even governed by advertising. It's its whole new team, and they have a special algorithm that tells them what's trending highly on Amazon. And that's how they choose what they're going to cover product-wise. So that means if you're doing product PR, Amazon reviews are almost your first port of call. And then I asked a bunch of other guys, and they said, well, traffic pays the bills, so we're probably going to cover something link-baity even if we don't want to. And I asked another person, he said the same thing, and another one. And I was like, okay, I really need to start having a look at this whole AI thing that's helping them choose what to cover, because then I just know what content to make, right? And then I asked a few more. How much of your content is directed by AI? 50%. And actually that's scaling. This is really conservative. It's way more than that in some publications. And this was super helpful, because I had this client called Kai come to me, and they're the Future of Human Interface Technology conference. Basically, complete geek heaven. And they said, we've got all these academic papers, and we need you to pick a few and promote them to get the conference some attention. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to go somewhere hot over Christmas, and I'm going to read some super geek papers, pick a couple, and promote them. And then the email came through, and there was 150 of them. And they're like 10 pages long. I was like, frick, what am I going to do? And then I remembered the AI, and I was like, let me have a look at Kickstarter. Let me see what's trending highly there. And then I went off to CES, and I really just walked around and listened to the words people were mentioning. And I made a list of these terms, and I put them into Google Trends. And I was specifically looking for ones that were trending up and to the right. And then I searched for the frequency of these terms in the academic papers. And that made my short list of papers. With a very small team, and just using a little bit of analysis, we got over 100 pieces of coverage globally, purely by hacking the AI. And then I saw this. I was sitting with a Crunchbase journalist, and he pulled out these graphs. And if you look at these graphs, what they're showing is that there is a direct correlation between VC deal volume and searches. And this got my mind thinking. I was like, so if I learn to trade, I'll be ahead of all the trends. So I was like, right, I don't really know how to trade. So I'm going to get the cheapest, easiest app I can. It's called eToro. It's awesome. I put money into it for myself and all my staff. And now every day, we're playing with the algorithms, and we're looking at what's coming up. And that means we're way ahead of a lot of the AI, because things will appear in the financial markets often before they will appear in the consumer markets. So it's super helpful. But seasonal trends are awesome, because you don't even need any technology to tell you about this. And I was working with a client called Finder.com, and I had had this idea for a Christmas campaign for about 6 years. And I'd pitched it to a client before, and they didn't go for it. And I really wanted to do it. Because you see, I'd been looking at coverage year in, year out, and I'd realized that nobody actually likes their Christmas presents at all. right? Nobody. In fact, a large percentage of money is spent on Christmas presents that nobody wants. And every year I saw eBay go out with a story about how many things are being uploaded to their site. And every year I was like, oh, I've got to persuade a client to do this. And I eventually persuaded Finder. And so we built this page. We did a bit of research. We did some surveys talking about all the money that's wasted on Christmas presents. But I'd waited a long time to do this. And I didn't really want it to fail. And trend jumping is really risky if you do it in isolation, because loads of people are doing it. And I didn't want all my eggs in one basket. So I was like, what can I do? And I thought it through, and it occurred to me that actually, we have Halloween coming up. I could almost test run the theory behind the story on Halloween. So we made a page looking at all the details of Halloween, how much people spend, how many pumpkins, lots of big numbers. Not rocket science, just big fancy numbers that get people to give clicks. Went out, got a good set of coverage, and got a good set of contacts of people who like stories like this. And in fact, that was so effective that when it came to Thanksgiving, I figured we have the formula, we know how the page looks, this is now cheap and easy to run out. And so we did another one. I mean, Americans spend $105 billion on turkeys. I don't even like turkey, so that for me is wild. Got a bunch of coverage for it, and now I had a really good list of media, and I'd already told them that I have this awesome story coming at Christmas. So when we got round to launching this, coverage came in pretty fast. But I didn't have as much as I wanted. And the thing is, there's always a tipping piece of coverage in any big campaign, and it doesn't always come at the beginning. In fact, most often, it comes about a week or two in. And it's really hard to stay and keep pushing when you're not getting it. But we eventually got it, and it was USA Today. And in fact, we'd pushed so hard on so many journalists, we ended up getting 2 pieces, which resulted in us getting over 69 pieces of coverage for this project. But I want to draw your attention to one key thing here. We're always a little mean to publications that don't link out, and we blacklist them. If I had blacklisted USA Today, we would never have got this. These sort of publications create tipping points that allow you to get significantly more coverage and links, and we shouldn't be taking them off our media lists. So at this point, I decided to move away from looking at how they were deciding on content and look at how they were creating it. And it occurred to me that the AP, the Associated Press, were auto-generating content. And so are Reuters. And in fact, this is making them a hell of a lot of money. And they're allowed to make 12 times more coverage than ever before in the business and finance sectors purely based of AI. Which means if you want to get into that 12%, you have to learn how to pitch both humans and machines. But the good news is, pitching machines right now isn't that difficult. Most of the news is fed completely by news wires and emails to the news addresses, which means there's a whole new value to mail merge. I'm not saying you spam people, it has to be the news addresses or it won't work, but it's incredibly valuable and incredibly effective, especially in the American finance markets. Now, it's currently focused on business and finance for a reason, and that's because they're regulated industries. You can't just go out with huge lies. So I started to think, well, how is this going to scale? What's the future of this? And then I remembered that there was an infographic I had worked on years ago. It was on blood diamonds, and it was for a diamond company, a jewelry company, and I'd really struggled to get coverage for this. And so eventually I decided to take it to local news in Zimbabwe, because I was like, somebody has to care, and local news always care. So I went out to Zimbabwe Press, and then when I got that piece, I pointed Diamond News at that article, and they covered it, which made it really simple to send the Diamond News article to the New York Times. Now, this is a manual thing that journalists do a lot. They look to trade publications and then write it into the national news. So to me, it makes perfect sense that they're going to scale this in an automated fashion because they trust the content that's coming out of trade publications, which means trade publications are going to be more valuable than ever before. But the reality is you can have the best ideas and promote them in the best way and hack all the AI in the world, but if no one signs off on something, it's not going anywhere. Now I have a process for thinking about signing off. I like to think about it in terms of frogs. Now there's a fable that says if you put a frog in hot water, it'll jump straight out. When you put it in cold water and you turn the heat up slowly, it'll just stay there and eventually cook to death. That's kind of what you want to do with your clients. And let me show you what I mean. I was working with a client called Syndicate Room, and they'd had a really bad time with agencies in the past and were super nervous. So I didn't want to go pitch a huge, big, crazy campaign because I knew they'd just jump straight out that part. So what I did was, I went to our journalist consulting board that helps us decide if content is good, content is bad, and I said to them, what are you looking for in terms of opinion pieces and in the finance sector? And they gave us a list of topics. I then went back to the client with the list of topics, and we came up with a list of articles. After that, we took that list of articles to our consulting board, anonymized. The key thing is if you're ever asking for journalist feedback, it has to be anonymized, or you jeopardize the journalist's integrity. And we went out and we placed all of these in a bunch of places where we know they take op-eds. So that can be anything from big newspapers down to smaller blogs. And by this point, we had a warm frog. So I got to thinking, okay, are we ready to go for gold? Can I do something big with them yet? I thought, I really don't want to scare them off when they're only par-cooked. So I had a look at some of their old content, because an old idea done better is often less risky than a completely new idea. And it's a lot easier to get through because the clients know the process. So I looked through all of their stuff, and I found this report. It was an analysis of early investor sentiment, like what do investors think and feel. It's like, that's kind of interesting. So I said to the client, how would you feel about just updating this? And the key thing is, I didn't ask them to say yes. I just asked them to consider it. I didn't want them to give me an answer in the room. I really wanted them to think about it because they were nervous, and the instantaneous answer would have been no. So I gave them time to boil. In the meantime, I went out to the journalist consulting board and I sought feedback. And the trick is to ask for more than 2 people, because if you ask one person, you don't get enough of an idea. And as the feedback came through, I sent it through to the client. And this was great because the client didn't have to believe me that it was a good idea. They had all these different journalists coming back saying, yeah, we would cover this, we would cover this. And eventually they signed off the idea. And the great thing is I could look at all the old coverage and I could put it into Google, and I looked at all the tags, so startup companies, finance, investors, and I started to explore what publications were covering that sort of content, and that allowed me to massively expand the previous media list. And I did the exact same thing with Gorkana, because when you're working in a new industry, it can sometimes be hard to know which publications to go after, but if you know just one, you can look at it in Gorkana and see the sectors. So here it says B2B trade, business general. Great. Okay, I can search a whole list from there, and I got a massive list of publications. And then we went out with our media outreach, but we weren't trying to get people to cover it on round 1. All I wanted was people to say they were interested. And if you try and get media to sign off on anything in one go, you're unlikely to be very successful. They're just too overloaded. But we use BuzzStream sequences, which means I can write one email, a second email, and a third email, and just automate the follow-up. So I don't have to do anything. I can go home and have a nap, and this stuff is just happening. You can also use Boomerang. It's not a terrible tool for this either. And so when it launched, we put it out on a newswire because we knew that it was going to be absorbed by the AI, and all our emails went out automatically. And it meant that we ended up getting 19 pieces of coverage for a piece of content that didn't get many before, and 17 links. But if you're looking at the average domain authority thinking 47 is a bit rubbish, I understand. There's a lot of big publications there, but we're actually pulled down by the trade publications because they have quite low domain authority. But I was really keen to promote it to them because we know that trade is going to be the next wave of AI integration. And so I wanted to have those strong relationships with them. But do you know what happened? Turns out that trade converts extraordinarily well. And we got more traffic and conversions from the trade than any of the nationals. Now, we've had a little look at AI, machine learning, how to talk to clients. But this is the part I'm really excited about. I want to talk to you about getting ready for the future. Now, we all know that images are critical, and we spend a lot of time with graphic designers mocking up really great graphics, but actually nothing works better than photos. And 91% of consumers are saying that they want visual images over text, so we really need to get strong at taking good photos. And for me, that meant that I didn't want to have to hire a photo studio every time I want to take a great image. So we went and we got one in our office. And it's not that expensive to do. You can get a pop-up tent for $100 that will allow you to take great photos. And it means for every story you do, you can accompany it with great images of high quality. And it lowers that barrier to entry, because if you have to go and rent a studio, hire a photographer, you're just unlikely to do it. But with 91% of consumers wanting visual images, we have to. And building visually accurate brands is just going to become so much more important, especially as voice search increases. Because if you think about it, you have visual search being number one, and then voice search. Well, you're just going to be pulling up pages of images. You're not even going to be seeing the suggested searches around it. So you're not going to get that wider context for a brand. And visual searches can actually make or break stereotypes. And we need to be careful about doing this when we're working with big brands. Let me show you what I mean. If you type in terrorist, this is what you see. Does anyone feel that this is an accurate representation of terrorism? Is Will Smith a terrorist? Not sure, doubt. And it's basically telling us that a terrorist is neither female nor Caucasian. That's not right. And I'm massively surprised that nobody's tried to tackle this, because this is perpetuating an incredibly dangerous and negative stereotype. But in a more lighter sense, look at plumber jobs. There are female plumbers. There are female pilots. And not all nurses are women. And not one job site has gone out there and tried to tackle this. I mean, what an awesome PR stunt just to hack the search results and say, hey, we've hacked them so that they are now visually representing what the actual split of the markets are. No one's going to feel like a job is for them if they don't see themselves in it. And we're going to have to think about this a lot more when we're promoting companies. And I'm not saying you go out there and make sure you've got an equal gender divide or ethnicity split in your searches. But you might want to put up a page that says, hey, we're looking to empower women in technology, and this is our campaign, and make sure that gets indexed. Because otherwise you're going to perpetuate an image that isn't true. And we're also going to have to start targeting ecosystems in which new products live. And this part, I think, is awesome. I am so excited for it. Because there's a guy called Brian Johnson, and he's pioneering neurological cures for different diseases. And he's going to do it by putting chips in our brains. Now, that might sound a little scary, and it looks really scary when you look at the wider searches for cyborg. I mean, this doesn't look like something I want to be. I mean, some of you might want to be superheroes, and that's cool. I'm all up for that. But inherently, we don't want to be forced into it in order to get treatment. But the reality is, when we look at the definition of a cyborg, it's actually just a mixture of organic and mechanical matter. Well, we already have that. That's what hearing aids are. That's what pacemakers are. But that's not what's showing when you Google cyborg. And if he wants to get this product to market and he wants to persuade people to put chips in their brains, he's going to have to start thinking a lot more about these wider searches. Because we run the risk of not adopting new life-saving and changing technologies if we don't. And I think the coolest part of this is that we're, as SEOs, online marketers, in the best position to play a crucial role in the advancement of technology and human wellness by the creative application of search technology. Now, how many of you have done this? Whenever I need to boil an egg, I just put it straight into Google. It tells me exactly what I need to do. It's brilliant. It's efficient. Google's trying to give me an answer really fast. That's what I asked for. That's what it gave me. I also put this in a couple of months ago. Lung cancer survival stats, and it gave me a really efficient answer. I was on a train when I did this, and I just found out that somebody I loved had lung cancer. I looked at this stat and realized, oh, there's a 4% chance of them surviving. I got off the train, was feeling a bit dizzy, walked up to a train official, and fainted. Now, this poor lady, as I fainted, I had my laptop on my back, and I work for myself, so that's my business. So what I decided to do was grab hold of her breasts as I slid down her body. And my last thought, as I passed out, after looking at her very angry face, because not everyone wants to be groped in public, it turns out, was that actually efficiency had really hurt me. It almost broke my laptop, and this poor woman got assaulted. I was like, this isn't very good. And you might say, well, what does this have to do with me in search? Well, search volume for cancer is not going down. In fact, it's going up. And I want you all, for just a second, think about the person in front of you, the person behind you, the person to your left, and the person to your right. 1 in 2 people are going to get cancer in their lifetime. Half of all those people you just thought about are going to be doing queries like that. And these search results should aim to be intelligent, not just efficient. And they should facilitate health and not panic. So what does that actually mean? Well, I got on another train, and I thought to myself, you know what, it'd be far healthier if it looked like this. Warning, an efficient result may not be what you need. Breathe in for the time it takes to read this. Breathe out for the time it takes to read this. This is what you need to know to put the data you're asking for in context, making it harder for me to get to the data that could harm me. You need to know what type of cancer it is. You need to know if it's spread. And did you know these 4 people that you always speak to are online right now, and you could call them? But if you want to go look at this data really quickly, here it is. And the great thing about this is that wearable tech can help us do this. Wearable technology can tell us if we're in a heightened state of emotion or not, which means it can tell us whether we surface an efficient result or an emotionally intelligent one. Now, my Fitbit feeds straight into my Gmail. All I'd have to do is click a button to Google and say, hey, I'd like an emotionally intelligent search result, please, and allow it to do that. And I'm super up for doing that. And when we look at the increase in wearable technology that's coming out and the search volume around it, I don't think we're that far from the future of search being emotionally intelligent, which means we need to start thinking about creating content that is emotionally responsive if we want to be ahead of the curve for optimization. Now, we've had a look at AI and machine learning. We've looked a little bit at how to get clients to sign things off and getting ready for the future. So I want to leave you a few thoughts. Boil your frogs slowly. Don't be afraid to go for silver over gold. And be kind. Hire kind people. Be kind to other searchers. Because you need to be kind. Because as search professionals, you have the ability to make or break stereotypes. And we're not regulated. There is no one telling us what is right or wrong. It's just us and Google, which means we have to have our hearts in the right place from the very beginning. In the future, SEO skills are going to play a crucial role in helping others before they even know they need it, which means we're not just marketeers. We're going to play a crucial role in the next wave of healthcare and well-being. Thank you so much. These are my recommended reads. If you have a chance, check them out. Thank you.
Turn the music up in the